When Jesus healed a man on the Sabbath, the Jewish leaders got very angry with him. Then when they heard Jesus refer to God as his Father, they got even angrier with Jesus, and from that point on, they determined to kill him. Not only did Jesus call God his Father, but he also told the Jewish leaders that their father was the devil. He said that they fulfilled the wishes of their father, who was a murderer from the very beginning and who had no truth in him. Why did the Jewish leaders despise Jesus so much for calling God his Father? Sons of Satan are still around today in the form of various religious groups who, just like their ancestors, hate to hear true followers of Jesus calling God their Father. And I'd like to take a real quick look at what they're trying to do about the problem. Hi, I'm Dolly Weber. These religious groups have tried their hardest to convince believers to call the Father anything else but Father. Jehovah, Yahweh, Yehoshua, Yahushua, even claiming that just like any other magic words, that pronunciation was key to getting the best results. Yet Jesus clearly and sweetly invites those who follow him to go directly to the Father in the name of Jesus and to call him Father when they do so. When Jesus walked the earth, Father is what Jesus called him, and that is what Jesus instructs all his followers to call God, our Father. So why all the furor over the many names that people keep coming up with? As I clearly laid out in my video, does the Father have a first name? Up until Jesus, and for several hundred years after Jesus, everyone understood that the Father had no first name. Even people like Plato and Justin Martyr addressed this very issue and stated without any hesitation that God needed no name. He had been given no name, nor did he give himself a name. Names are intended for created beings who need to be labeled, but no way apply to God, who is the creator and is magnificently one of a kind. All the names that people have come up with for God are sneaking in by a phony code idea dreamed up by the Jesus-hating Masoretes. That group of men around the 10th century AD drastically modified the Old Testament that Jesus used and created the one we use today. Not only did their version eliminate 23 of the books that Jesus read from, but they also concocted the notion of a code that they called the Tetragrammaton. And that's what they used to announce that God had a first name all along, but had encrypted it so that people wouldn't actually speak his name. Yep, that's right. The God who urges us to call upon him anytime for anything and to call him Dad when we do that. All the names, including the ones the Masoretes first made up and had inserted into the King James Bible, are actually names of specific pagan gods. I encourage you to do your own research, and you just might find my video, Does the Father Have a First Name?, a good place to start. I'll leave a link in the description below. In short, the Septuagint Old Testament that Jesus used never ever referred to a first name for God. Jesus never referred to any first name for God. There never was, nor is there now, any first name for God. But even without digging any further about where those other names really came from, if one truly follows Jesus, then they do what Jesus said to do, right? If Jesus told us to refer to the Father as our Father, then at the end of the day, proverbially speaking and literally speaking, we would do best to call him Father, since Jesus told us to, right? Even if we discovered that there were missing names that had been covered up by some code, we would still pray the way Jesus told us to pray, and without ceasing at that. And we would refer to God as Father, right? After all, since when does a child call a parent by the first name? Jesus never did. Jesus' reference to the Father did not stop with the prayer that he gave us by example to pray, Our Father who is in heaven. Jesus referred constantly to the Father for those who followed him then and to those who follow him today. It is a title of intimacy and dependency. The Father wants us to be totally dependent on him for everything and in every way. Jesus invites us to share his intimacy with the Father. He said, I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his father's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. If we truly follow Jesus, then it pleases the Father to hear us call him what Jesus called him, Father. Do we call him that? How many of those who promote the so-called sacred names, or even so-called ineffable or unspeakable names, tell you that at the end of the day that true followers of Jesus should simply call him Father? Or do those other name promoters share something suspiciously in common with the religious leaders of Jesus' day? Might those sacred name promoters hate it when you call God your Father? Could that be why they work so hard to prevent that from happening by giving you all these other names to use instead? And how many sacred name promoters do you hear calling him Father? If they truly follow Jesus and know so much as they want you to think they do, then surely they would be following what Jesus told them to do. If you as a child learned that one of your parents had their name changed, either by marriage or for any other reason, discussing the name change for discussion's sake would be one thing, but at the end of the day, you would call that parent mom or dad, right? So it should be for those who follow Jesus and obey his instructions. If Jesus is your Lord and Master, then his Father is your Father, and he wants you to refer to his Father the way that he referred to him. Call him Father. Do you? If someone is a true follower of Jesus, then he or she will refer to God simply as Father, or maybe Abba, or my daddy in heaven. A true follower of Jesus does not use a first name by the instruction of men, which Jesus himself never used, nor did he even announce. If someone is an obedient follower of Jesus, then even if they have been lied to about the existence of a first name for God, at the end of the day, they will call him Father. That is what the God of the Bible wants to be for us, and that is what his Son instructed us to call him. Whose voice have the others been listening to that causes them to ignore what Jesus, the Son of God, instructed us, to believe what some strange men told us to do instead? If someone is teaching you about newly discovered first names for God, but does not encourage you to call him Father, nevertheless, then that person is carrying out the desires of a different father, the devil himself. I encourage you all to take this to the Lord. Heed and obey the instructions of Jesus, and beware of the voice of the stranger who hates God and hates all those who call him Father. I look forward to talking to you next time. The Lord bless you.